Hey y'all, it's Roger again. So in this next part of the documentary, we're going to listen to Max Hoberman give his thoughts on each of the 12 multiplayer maps that shipped with Halo 2 in November of 2004. Many of these maps are considered classics and have been remade multiple times in later Halo games. My personal favorites are Zanzibar, Beaver Creek, Headlong, and Lockout. I was 9 years old when I first played Halo 2. Getting to explore each of the worlds seen throughout the game was an unforgettable first-time experience. Each level has a distinct visual look and sound. The Bungie team really nailed the atmosphere on each environment. Some levels feel peaceful and pleasant, ironic surroundings for such violent conflicts. Some levels exhibit bizarre architectural structures or employ a sense of foreboding and mystery. Take a look at this giant cave. As a kid, I wondered, what is all this? Who built this giant machine, and for what? What does it do? Where in the galaxy even are we? As someone who enjoys a good sunset, the skyboxes on each level always caught my eye. A lot of maps have areas blocked off by invisible walls. It was those inaccessible areas of the map that left me wanting to explore further. And sure, the graphics are dated by today's standards, but you can still tell that rock is a rock, and that tree is a tree. You can tell exactly what everything is because Halo 2 has a super cool art style. And while I love the visual style of Halo 2, gameplay-wise, I'm not crazy about all the levels. Any Halo map has the ability to be either super fun, memorable experience, or rage-inducing frustration. It depends on personal skill, who the matchmaking system pairs you with, and how well the teams are balanced. That being said, the layout of some maps are definitely more fun than others. Multiplayer maps that play well with lots of game types and different settings are the true gems.
A lot of Halo 2 was born out of this sort of desperation of just having me and Chris Carney, and that was it. We really didn't have a lot of resources. I didn't even have a dedicated programmer for gameplay related stuff. So we just knew that there was really no room for error with such a small group. It was interesting because on the large scale, the really big stuff, 16 player, we didn't actually think we needed much for that because we thought, the warfare is going to take care of that. So we tended to focus on the smaller scale maps and some of the kind of medium-sized maps, and a lot of the arena maps. So yeah, just in our early designs, I put together a document that laid out all of our maps and laid out names actually for just, we didn't know what the maps were going to be, but all right, this is going to be a 4-player map that supports CTF, or this is going to be a 5-player, 6-player map that supports Team Slayer or something like that. And I gave all those maps names, and a lot of those names actually stuck in the map designs too. Like Lockout was one of the very, very first ones we did. I know everybody loves Lockout. Let's see, Lockout, Ivory Tower, Midship, Ascension. Those were 4 of the very first ones that within like 6 months we had them all up and playable, and they didn't change that much over the course of the project. This map was such a classic. I really like the I call it the close quarters ninja type maps. Really, it's this variety of maps, and it goes back to the variety of experiences in Halo. Lockout is Halo arena combat at its best.
Spectacular. This is the king, obviously, right here. This is Lockout, the greatest, arguably the greatest Halo multiplayer map.
You say arguably, but you told me last night that it was your favorite.
It is my favorite. It is not an arguable situation. I mean, it's Blood Gulch is a close second.
Yeah.
What was your favorite map favorite Halo 2 map back when you shipped in 2004?
My personal favorite was definitely Lockout. That was the map that I always had the most fun on. That kind of suited my own play style. I really like the kind of small arena combat, but with a lot of verticality and a lot of trick jumps and a lot of ramps to bounce things off of. I say it only half jokingly. That I've always felt, I've never heard anyone else say this, but I've always felt that my best weapon is a grenade. I've always felt like I'm a masterful grenade. I'm a little rusty now.
Guns, grenades, melee.
Yeah, but grenades, I've always, been able to just do amazing grenade throws that just, really crazy stuff. And I feel like I got on Lockout, I remember just feeling like I had sort of mastered all of these angles and bounces and everything else. And that was just so much fun for me. So I remember having a ton of fun on that.
The very first map that we developed was Lockout.
The majority of the design on this map was actually done by Chris Carney, who was my multiplayer environment art lead at the time.
It'd be interesting someday to get to Chris Carney and ask him his views on Lockout, because Lockout, the initial design, I suspect that he had it in his head, or he had things that he wanted to do following Halo 1. He worked on the multiplayer on Halo 1. He and I divvied up the maps, and we knew we needed a small one-on-one map, and I think he took that, and Lockout's what he came back with. His paper design was really screenshots of his 3D model. So I took it into Photoshop, and then I actually made like faux 3D walkways and paths and stuff, and suggested some changes to it.
So yeah, I had some influence on the map, like things like adding these guys in that goes around, allowing you up on the building.
We had this little kiosk that was kind of like an arcade style console, and it had an Xbox that had the screen, it was with controllers. So we got Lockout on there, and we would prop builds to the console. And then we had people playing Lockout one-on-one, a couple of our guys just obsessively day in and day out, just endlessly. It was amazing. It was exactly what we wanted from the map. I mean, personally, I always loved it. I really liked the close quarters, this sort of arena with the center arena. So Lockout just ended up being this amazing vertical experience with a lot of subtle movement tricks to it.
But it kind of keeps with the way that Halo 2 works, which is this idea that everything's really very, very balanced, asymmetry. We talked about Midship. I know that was a map people loved a lot. It wasn't at the very top of my personal list, even though it was the very first map that I actually designed on paper. Back in the Halo 2 days, going online was still a big deal. Not everyone had broadband internet.
Especially at the beginning.
Yeah, a lot of risks there. And some of that was kind of, again, it's that risk mitigation mentality, which is we don't know that everyone's going to be able to play online. I guarantee there are going to be people who are still playing this in a LAN party type setting, or just in their living room with one Xbox and, hopefully 4 controllers. So we got to give them something to play, right? We can't just leave them out in the cold. And that was the idea on Midship was, all right, one of our maps needs to be, which is a 2-on-2 CTF map that ended up being one of the most popular, certainly among the competitive crowd. This is Chris Carney's version of, he took it over and redid my layout. Yeah, and this is pretty close to what the final map ended up as. And we did this like 2 years before the game shipped, actually. The basic concept was you have 2 bases, 2 flags. If you have 2 people on each team, one guy's forced to stay on defense, one's on offense. So how do you get the guy who's on defense to be able to participate on offense to turn it into a team game so that they're working together? And the obvious answer was, well, make it so he can see the enemy flag and he can lob grenades over there and he can shoot across, but you don't want the guy who grabs the flag to run a beeline it straight back. So we have to lower that, front area, and we can't make it so you can just run point to point, because that wouldn't be any fun. And that's where you ended up with the lower pit in the center and the pathing around the exteriors and everything else. I mean, that one has stood the test of time, so how can you argue with it? I actually remember having a ton of fun on Midship, so I don't know why I wasn't quite as big a fan of it as a lot of other people seem to be. Midship just blows my mind that it became so popular. I think it became one of the most popular among all the competitive players also.
Yeah, it was the only map, I think, in Halo history to serve every tournament game type. So free-for-all, oddball, King of the Hill, assault, Slayer, everything. So it's it became pretty universal.
I always felt Ascension had a lot of potential but fell a little bit short, and I think that a lot of it had to do with insufficient cover. Ascension almost got cut because when we first did Ascension, it was really not any fun. They had a similar problem to Lockout, which is that all of the traffic routed through that dish in the middle, and there was no way to get to any of the 3 satellites without going through that dish. So the map just wasn't working. So this is actually my drawing when I got my hands on it, and I was proposing some changes to kind of make it work and adding these peripheral lower paths around the outside, which weren't there originally. The leap of faith was, you can see I wanted to have this spot where you jump down. If you look up in the left, you see it says fog right there.
Yeah.
Some awesome drawings.
Nice fog.
The idea was for the leap of faith, actually, that you'd run up and you'd look down and all you would see was a bank of fog, and then you just have to jump down through the fog and hope you landed it. Yeah, after we made these changes, it totally turned around the map, so got a lot better.
Here's the multi-story building over here. We got the dish in the middle. Over there's the sniper tower. Most of our original maps for Halo 2 were these smaller maps, kind of made for 2 to 8 players. And we had this goal of how on earth do you get vehicles into a small map? You know, the vehicles are such an integral part of the sandbox for Halo.
Absolutely.
We really wanted to fit them in. So this map was really designed with this idea that we'd have a Banshee on a small infantry type map. You know, one of the big challenges with this map, we were talking about the Banshee earlier.
Yeah.
The Banshee having this dominance of the map. I'd say sometimes snipers and people with battle rifle and whatnot, just really locking it down and owning it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and this is another example of that. We really needed more cover on this bridge. You go down this bridge and you're just sitting
you're naked out there, yeah.
And this is what I really wanted to have, was a way to get back onto the map and back into the center, instead of just being entirely stuck on that long walkway. Overall, I think it actually was a pretty good experiment.
Ivory Tower, hard map. That was one of the hardest maps, meaning we struggled on the paper design and in the early blockouts and all to get that one right.
It's weird, right? Because it's like you got this sort of courtyard and then
It's
these
unique.
back hallways and
Oh,
this
yeah.
two-stage elevator.
Yeah, it's very unique. But it actually turned out really well, and I have a lot of fond memories from Ivory Tower. Ivory Tower, when we did it on paper originally, was originally called Cyclotron. Yeah, and then we made this like fancy penthouse suite at the top of a tower, and we're like, that looks nothing like a cyclotron. So we had to change it. So we renamed Ivory Tower in honor of what everyone called Marty O'Donnell's private office. We called it the Ivory Tower. So that was how that map got its name.
Waterworks. I love this map. You do not feel the same way.
Waterworks was actually one of the first maps that I did the very first paper design for Waterworks, and I felt like with the final version of Waterworks, the bases themselves were too small and too simplistic to support 8-on-8 properly. And when you were out in the open, there just wasn't enough cover to support infantry versus vehicles properly. That vehicles had too much advantage.
The wraiths.
Yeah, especially. So, I think it could be fixed, but there's some things that just didn't quite work on it. I had some fun moments on it. A map that I kind of loved and hated was Burial Mounds. There were these experiences I had on that map that were just legendary, and they're usually these one flag CTF type base experiences that were just phenomenal, but then I had such terrible Team Slayer experiences. I really struggled back then. I really struggled to figure out how to integrate vehicles and infantry and how to add the right level of cover yet keep it open enough for driving. And I think in that respect, I don't think that map was very successful. In other ways it was very successful. So that was one that I, kind of loved and wanted it to be great, but I always felt like it just needed a little bit more time. Burial Mounds was actually based on a Halo 2 level that got cut. There was going to be a level on the moon, and it was part of the plan, so we had always...
Earth's moon?
No, on the, where, the ring explodes and all these fragments are on, on the moon, I forget the name of the moon. So that was all planned in the campaign, so originally we were trying to set all of our levels on spaces that fit the campaign, and then they cut that level and they changed all of that, so we didn't have anything to base it on, but we were like, all right, well, we're just going to make it on the moon, and here's big, giant pieces of the ring, and go. It was a unique setting and kind of cool environment. Colossus was ruined by that damn super bounce bug because it would affect the flag. It was always meant to be a 2-flag CTF map, primarily. That was its first and foremost reason for existing. And the way you could toss the flag and bounce it up to that, it just killed it for the gameplay. So that when I think of Colossus, I just get a little teary-eyed.
Since you were there in the early days, community Halo 1, dipping your foot in the water on design, and obviously Halo 2 and even into Halo 3, wanted to go, I'm just gonna start naming maps. And just give me
Is this a test?
just a quick what do you think of that map either now or back then?
All right.
Just like a reaction.
All right, bring
Give
it
me
on.
a reaction to each map.
Unfiltered reaction.
Battle Creek.
No, see, we were confused earlier. Is Battle...
So for sure, Battle Creek, Halo 1.
Okay, because
That
I
was
kept
the-
thinking... Because internally,
Battle
we
is one.
all called it Beaver Creek.
Well, that's the Halo 2
Is
variant.
it? I'm very confused.
So, Battle Creek, Halo
from
1.
Halo 1. Ton of fun. Great, symmetric, close quarters with lots of verticality. How could you not love it? Indoor and outdoor. All it needs. The only thing Battle Creek was missing was some light vehicles.
That would need to be a little bigger for that, I would suspect, right? Some sort of outer ring?
I don't know.
I like where you're going with this.
Might have been fun.
Might have been. That definitely would have been fun. Beaver Creek, the Halo 2 version of it. Obviously, the geometry was almost the same.
I was going to say, I think the biggest change that we made was ditching the ladders. We added the ramp up instead of the ladders, and I like to think that helped. That was kind of another one of those basic rules in Halo 2 is I really didn't want to have ladders, but pretty true to the original. So I think it held up well. I think it held its own. Blood Gulch is a fantastic map. This giant open terrain vehicle map.
It's got this sandboxy nature to it. It supports everything, all the vehicles, all the weapons, etc. Plus, it's so iconic. If you like, big open maps and vehicles and the sort of vehicle mayhem that is so integral to the Halo sandbox.
It isn't my personal play style because I tend to prefer the arena kind of close quarters. I actually do enjoy the vehicles, but maybe it's like I was saying earlier that I like grenades a lot. So I like corners and ramps and those tight quarters to play in. So
yeah, when we were working on the original Blood Gulch, that's almost all we played for a long time at Bungie. We would play Rocket Race all the time. The game mechanics didn't even work that well, but we still loved it.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say? Blood Gulch. It's Blood Gulch. It's awesome.
Hey there, gamers. Do you love jogging across wide open canyons with no cover while getting sniped? Boy, have we got the map for you. Welcome to Coagulation!
Coagu mother effin'lation. Talk to me.
Yeah,
React to the Halo 2
React,
version
right.
of it.
Coag, I feel like we overdid it.
Say what?
Really?
Yeah, I feel like we overcomplicated the bases in particular. So I wish we had done a little bit less in the bases and a little bit more outside of the bases.
There were 3 trees, which I think I actually put down the trees on there originally, trying to put a little more cover. We've got a couple subtle weapon changes here and there. Of course, we still have the rocket launcher in the middle of the map. And I was always a big fan of making you leave the base. It's like, all right, you want a close range weapon? You're gonna have to stick your neck out. You're gonna have to go, add some risk to that and then run back in. It's the beauty in Halo, the Halo sandbox and settings and everything is just go to town.
This map is so huge.
So big.
Yeah.
Takes forever. Just go and... Oh yeah, give me this vehicle. I'm sick of walking across this.
Foundation was, I had a lot to do with bringing Foundation over
From
because-
Marathon.
Yeah, it was a marathon map, and it wasn't actually one of my personal favorites, but it was one that was really popular, and a lot of the old school Bungie guys really liked it. And the main reason I did it is I really wanted, I told you I was a fan of Wizard.
Yeah.
Four-way symmetric map.
Yep.
I wanted another four-way symmetric map, and I wanted a little bit larger four-way symmetric map. So we did it, but it was kind of a Skunkworks project. We just kind of did it in our spare time.
Is that why it was an Easter egg
Yeah,
in the
because
shipping
it didn't-
game where you had to finish the campaign
we
to
didn't
unlock
really,
it?
yeah, we didn't really feel that it was kind of up to the quality bar, up to our own sort of internal standards, but we, it still kind of worked, and we really wanted to put it in there. So that was our sort of way of, justifying putting in something that we didn't feel was quite up to our standards, honestly.
The year is 2552. After a long fight, our colonial defense has failed, and the Covenant have made their way to Earth. Today's mission takes place 20 clicks north of the Covenant's primary point of incursion, in an abandoned township on the coast of East Africa. The handful of Marines who survived the Covenant assault called this place Hell on Earth. We call it Zanzibar.
Zanzibar. I can tell from having you're very proud of this one.
Yeah, Zanzibar was just an amazing kind of balls to the wall accomplishment. We did that thing so fast, and we were so ambitious with it, and we did it because we had to. After we did a E3 where we showed off single player New Mombasa, and then the following year, about maybe 2 months before E3, Pete Parsons and Jason Jones came to me and they said, "Hey Max, we have a problem. The single player is so on fire. We have so many problems. We can't afford to spend any time working on anything for E3 for the campaign. So we need you to show off something multiplayer for E3." Over the weekend, Carney and I talked about it. He came back on Monday with a paper drawing that I looked at. I gave him some feedback, mostly changing some of the pathing to create more loops, like allowing you to actually drive through the fan, which originally you couldn't do, and some little side paths and stuff like that. Within a day, we basically locked the paper design, and then we built it. All of a sudden, we had a bunch of additional resources to make something, so we sort of scrambled, and this is the paper design for Zanzibar that we did, and we built it, this whole thing, start to finish, in less than 2 months, specifically for E3, with all the crazy dynamic elements and all that stuff. None of those features were supported up to that point. All the dynamic lighting from the wheel turning, all that stuff we crammed in at the last minute. One of the things that I really wanted to do with Halo was really focus on adding game modes that were round-based, sort of single objectives, so like single flag CTF, single bomb assault, that sort of thing. So we looked at it and we said, this is a kind of fun game mode, but we don't have a map that's really designed around this kind of round-based single objective. So that's where we came up with Zanzibar and really kind of went to town on it. there's a lot of things we did on Zanzibar to, okay, we're going to design this asymmetric map with bases and people that can, hole up and sit around camping their flag with shotguns and rocket launchers and stuff. So we had to do things to try and counterbalance that. Things like put rocket ammo, for instance, out there. Entice the guy with the rocket launcher to come out of the base, risk his neck for some advantage. So there's a lot of that thinking that went into the map. And One Flag CTF was kind of born from that vision of, hey, if you only got 4 guys on a team, let's not split them up and have half of them on defense and half on offense. Right, let's get 4 guys all working together, coordinating with a single sole focus and objective. And that's just a lot more user-friendly, a lot more easy to understand and accessible. For a long time, I actually planned on putting a Banshee on this map, which was just crazy. I don't know what I was thinking. Would have been fun, but it was crazy. You were at E3. You said
it was
in the room
first,
when I was demoing it, right?
And it was the first time I ever played Halo 2 because it was a E3 2004. The behind closed doors demo. It was 5 on 5.
Again, right? 5 on 5.
5 on 5. One
fun.
flag CTF.
Yeah, and it held up really well. And honestly, it really barely changed from what we did there. And I think, hope a lot of that we'd been working on multiplayer for a while, and we'd done it. We'd created a lot of maps. So I think a lot of that experience we'd gained along the way, we kind of put into that map. I love Zanzibar. Zanzibar is such an awesome map for so many reasons.
When the Halo 2 goes out the door 10 years ago, which one was sort of at the bottom of your list? Like, we shipped it, it's okay, but it's not my...
This is gonna sound really odd, but people are gonna think I'm crazy. Headlong.
Interesting.
Headlong was actually near the bottom of my list.
It's kind of, it's sort of a love it or hate it kind of map.
Of all the shipping maps for Halo 2, Headlong was the very last map that we designed. It just never was able to get the level of refinement that some of the other maps got. It got the least amount of iteration time, right? In the terms of early paper designs and blockout and playtesting. We really had to kind of crank that thing out pretty quickly. We needed more large, big team battle maps than we had originally planned for because we thought there's going to be this whole other game. And then it was also post-Zanzibar where we now had the ability to do these dynamic elements. Headlong was an attempt to design a map with these dynamic elements from the get-go, which mostly ended up being the big beam in the middle, the one that you could walk on that would move and all that. It's kind of gimmicky, but it's kind of fun too. I do have a lot of fond memories around the base structure and a lot of fun vehicle combat. I think the starting structure, the way that you spawn and you all break up and go in different directions, and that broke another one of my fundamental rules about the team should all start moving in a line and then branch off. I was kind of surprised years later to find out that Headlong had actually turned out to be a very popular map. We remade Headlong.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me. I always felt like Headlong, again, it had some potential, but I always felt it had some fundamental flaws that also needed, not that different than Barrel Mounds in that respect, but it had some fundamental issues that needed to be resolved. So, there were some things, sort of best practices that weren't followed, and I think would have made it a stronger map, especially on the attacker side kind of start. If I could do the map over, I would cut that side of the map and redo it and keep the base side of the map more or less intact.
See, that only, I think, proves my point from earlier that it was Bungie operating at the peak of their powers, because even the bottom of the list map is better than most shooters' best map now.
Yeah, and I give a lot of the credit for that to the team that we had there, and certainly a lot of it to Chris Carney, who was our lead environment artist, but he also designed a lot of the maps.